Hilarious, my brother stole my body and wife, thinking he could replicate my life, but became a sickly cuckold. My younger brother, Ethan, thought my wife was gentle and beautiful, superior to him in every way. This made him, who had been spoiled and favored by our parents since childhood, insanely jealous. One day, he despicably grabbed me, and we jumped from a building together. Unexpectedly, we were reborn, and we had swapped bodies. He became me, and I became him. Ethan, now in my body, used my guaranteed university admission scores, used my identity to get close to my wife, and used my previous life's successful ventures to attract investments. He even flaunted it smugly in front of me. He thought I would be furious, but little did he know, I was ecstatic about swapping lives with him. Because my life had only appeared happy and glamorous on the surface, in reality, it was a complete mess. Now that someone else had taken it, I just wanted to tell him, "Thanks for jumping into the fire pit for me, Chapter 1. Sincere, you know what? I've been jealous of you since we were kids. Jealous of everything you have, your smart brain, your smooth sailing life, and jealous that you have a wife as beautiful and hot as Sophia. I always felt that if I were you, I could live a much better life." Listening to Ethan Miller's words, I had mixed feelings. My younger brother, Ethan, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, had suddenly asked to talk and drink with me. He'd set up a table on the rooftop, bought some snacks, and we were eating and drinking together. Before we'd had many drinks, Ethan started complaining endlessly again, dredging up old trivial matters. He thought that by becoming me, he could have a perfect life, but he didn't know that the pain and torment I had endured were far more severe than he could ever imagine. I looked at him, wanting to tell him that life isn't a simple exchange. You don't automatically find happiness by taking over someone else's life. But what could I say? Faced with Ethan's almost crazed, jealous gaze, I could only keep drinking, one glass after another. All my sorrows were drowned in the alcohol. Seeing I wasn't speaking, Ethan's eyes gradually reddened. He continued, "Sincere, to be honest, I'm at the end of my rope." "What do you mean?" The alcohol was getting to my head, and I felt a bit muddled. "All of you look down on me. I just want to prove myself. I borrowed money to start a business, and ended up deep in debt." Jason translated text. "To pay it back, I had to gamble, and now I'm stuck with high-interest loans from loan sharks." As he spoke, Ethan's expression became increasingly twisted, his face twisted with rage. He suddenly smashed his bottle and roared, "It's not fair. Why do you always have it so easy? Why am I always the unlucky one? If I can't live, I'm taking you down with me. What nonsense are you talking about? You've had too much to drink." Before I could finish, Ethan violently grabbed me. That's when I noticed several needle marks on his arm. Had this young punk taken drugs? While I was drunk and staggering, Ethan actually embraced me and leaped from the rooftop. Ha ha ha. He let out a wild laugh. The night wind howled. In those few seconds of falling, I finally sobered up. But it was too late. There was regret, but also the relief of release. I hit the ground abruptly, and my consciousness sank into darkness. After an unknown amount of time, a familiar voice called out, "Hey, don't sleep. The teacher is coming." When I opened my eyes again, I looked around and found myself slumped over a desk in a familiar classroom. I had actually traveled back to high school, but why was I sitting in the last row and next to the trash can? Just then, I saw a boy in the front row suddenly look up, turn around, and stare at me. It was, shockingly, my own high school face, and when I looked down, the name on the textbook on my desk read, Ethan Miller. I was stunned for a good while. Before it hit me, my brother Ethan and I had been reborn at the same time, and we had swapped bodies. He grinned at me, his eyes full of unconcealed triumph. Clearly, Ethan had finally obtained the life he had always dreamed of. He was probably ecstatic, but he definitely couldn't imagine that the real nightmare was just beginning. "What are you thinking about?" That familiar voice sounded again. I turned my head. The girl sitting at the next desk, my deskmate, was Ethan Miller's future wife, and in my previous timeline, my sister-in-law, Victoria Scott. She had grown up in a small country town, and her family was very poor. Even though she lived far from school, she still had to commute daily, partly because she couldn't afford room and board, and partly to go home after school to help out and supplement the family income. I heard she usually went to bed around 1 or 2 in the morning and woke up at 5 or 6, sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a night, then napping for an hour or 2 during the lunch break. Although Victoria studied very hard, her grades never improved. After all, a person's energy is limited. If you don't get enough sleep, how can you concentrate in class? Plus, she had no time to do homework at home, so she often couldn't turn in all her assignments and had been moved to the last row by the teacher. In high school, Victoria Scott had a pure and cute appearance, but Ethan had always found her dowdy and thought her constant dark circles were an embarrassment. He preferred well-dressed, mature older girls, or the cool, rebellious types who frequented nightclubs. Later, for some unknown reason, the two of them got together and married. I was in college at the time, so I wasn't very clear about what happened between Ethan and Victoria. Right now, I rubbed the bridge of my nose, suppressed my complex emotions, forced a smile, and said, "Nothing." Ethan's life, in reality, was much happier than mine had been. Since he didn't cherish it himself, I wouldn't hold back. The college entrance exams were fast approaching. With my previous academic foundation, reviewing and catching up wouldn't be difficult, but Ethan had purely goofed off for 3 years. Even if he were given another 3, he'd have to start learning from scratch, let alone with only a month left before the exams. Life's watershed moment had arrived again. Chapter 2. To catch up quickly, I made a study plan for myself. The last month of senior year was mainly for review anyway, but I was still a bit out of touch, so I had to start from the basics, picking up exercises from freshman and sophomore years, selecting the hardest problems, understanding them thoroughly, and then moving on to the next topic. During the break, Ethan Miller came over, whistling, hands in his pockets, a mocking smile on his face. "Well, little bro, hitting the books?" Ethan said with a smirk. "Why work so hard? Come on, let's go out and have some fun." I glanced up at him and said coolly, "The final exams are coming up. Aren't you going to focus on reviewing?" I still vividly remembered the entanglements of our past life. The moment he jumped off the building with me, any warmth or familial affection I had for him had vanished, leaving only cold indifference. "I can get early admission. What's there to review?" "You've probably forgotten, huh?" Ethan said, grinning. His words reminded me. In my senior year of high school, the school had recommended me for early admission, but I hadn't taken it because I wanted to try for a top university. But on the day of the exams, I had a sudden stomachache and diarrhea, which caused me to underperform. In the end, I only got into the university I would have been admitted to early anyway. It didn't matter. Starting over, I would definitely do better than in my last life because I had always relied on myself. That was my confidence and my foundation. "Oh, congratulations then," I said, completely unfazed. Ethan, not seeing the anger or regret he expected on my face, probably found it boring and left resentfully. I continued to bury my head in my studies, constantly reinforcing the knowledge I had forgotten. I had to admit, Ethan's body was really good. He had been strong since childhood, a good fighter, and never seemed to get sick from exposure to wind or rain. Unlike my original body, which had practically been raised on medicine, the slightest chill would make me ill. Later, due to frequent business dinners and drinking, I had developed liver cancer. To avoid worrying my family, I kept it a secret from everyone except myself. In this life, I had learned my lesson. Health is the foundation of everything. As I was studying hard, Victoria Scott nudged my arm with her elbow and asked doubtfully, "You don't have a fever, do you? Why are you suddenly studying today?" She paused, then added, "And you haven't argued with your brother. Usually you two would have definitely fought by now. What's going on? You seem like a completely different person." I smiled but didn't explain. I still felt goodwill towards Victoria. She was kind-hearted, used to help her family frequently, and had no complaints after marrying Ethan in the previous timeline. I used to think she was too good for him. Soon the class teacher gave a pop quiz, and desk mates swapped papers to grade them. Because it wasn't too difficult, I finished quickly. Victoria was still struggling with her paper, occasionally dozing off. After swapping papers, I unsurprisingly got a near-perfect score, while Victoria's paper was a disaster. Did you cheat? Victoria said in disbelief. No, wait, I watched you write it. Have you been studying secretly behind my back? These questions aren't actually that hard, I said casually. Victoria glanced at her paper, her expression immediately turning dejected. Not hard. Why can't I understand any of them? Am I really just naturally stupid? Seeing her like this, I felt a bit sorry for her. If things went as expected, once I got into university, Victoria and I would likely have no more contact. Unless... What are your plans after graduation? I asked proactively. Victoria lowered her head and said, My dad said if I don't get into college, I should find someone to marry after graduation. No wonder she studied so desperately. And no wonder they had gotten together after graduation in the previous timeline. How about I tutor you? I said. Victoria looked me up and down. You? Don't believe me? I believe you. I believe you. Very few in our class could get a score like yours just now, Victoria sighed. But even if someone tutors me, I won't have time to sleep. That's not hard. You can just stay in the dorm. I'll cover the accommodation fees, I said. A few $100s should cover it. Where would you get the money? Victoria asked, puzzled. Wait, why are you suddenly so nice to me? Are you possessed or something? Just say yes or no, I asked directly. This was Victoria's only chance to change her life. How could she possibly refuse? She agreed immediately, saying she would go home and tell her parents she had saved up money to live and study at the school dorm. How much her grades could improve with a month of intensive review, I honestly had no idea. All I could do was my best and leave the rest to fate. As for the room and board fees, it wasn't actually difficult to come by. Once, when a friend and I were leaving school, we passed a lottery shop. We bought tickets for each other. I didn't win, but he did about $5,000. The winning number happened to be my birthday combined with my lucky number. The owner even put up a banner advertising it for a month. I remembered this incident very clearly. Back then, I often thought if only I had been the one to win the lottery. Right now, I happen to need some money. Chapter 3. I bought a lottery ticket, waited for the draw, and sure enough, I won. $5,000 wasn't a huge amount. After taxes, it was quickly deposited into my account. I transferred a few $100s to Victoria so she could pay for her room and board. With sufficient sleep, her energy improved significantly, but she had fallen behind in many subjects. While helping her review, I also consolidated my own knowledge. Just like that, a month flew by. On the day of the college entrance exams, I performed as expected. I applied to the same university as in my previous life. After much consideration, I decided to go back to my old school, partly for the advantage my foreknowledge gave me, and partly because I missed my old classmates. Victoria performed exceptionally well and got into a good local university. When choosing her university, she picked one very close to mine. In my parents' eyes, Robert and Susan Miller, having two sons go to university at the same time, was a cause for celebration. They immediately threw a banquet and invited friends and relatives for a college acceptance party. Soon I experienced the benefits of being the younger brother in this new body. My parents were used to neglecting the me I now was. On the day of the party, they all surrounded Ethan No. He was Sincere Miller to them now, and almost no one paid me the real Sincere, in Ethan's body, any mind. For the brother of my past life, Ethan, this treatment would undoubtedly have been a form of coldness that fueled his jealousy. But at this moment, watching Ethan, who they thought was Sincere Miller, the center of everyone's attention, a cold sneer appeared on my lips. What's free is often the most expensive. With so many people praising him to the skies now, and Mom and Dad having such high hopes for him, the harder and more painful his fall would be later. This was a lesson I had learned through blood and tears. Soon, Ethan in Sincere's body, and I Sincere in Ethan's body, both started university. Victoria Scott was also studying at a nearby university and kept in touch with me, occasionally visiting. To afford her tuition, Victoria started working part-time as soon as university began, and was usually very busy. Ethan, on the other hand, stayed out all night, every night. His name was always on the list during dorm checks, and he was also frequently reprimanded for skipping classes. One day I found some time to bring lunch to Victoria at the store where she worked and bumped into Ethan, who was there to buy something. He had his arm around a beautiful female student with exquisite makeup and stylish clothes, clearly from a well-off family. I recognized her at once. It was my wife from my previous life, Sophia Davis. Well, old desk mate. Oh no, old classmate, what are you doing working here? Ethan was the first to notice Victoria, greeting her with a smile. Then, his gaze fell on me, and he immediately became smug, his expression seeming to say, "Look, I've got your beautiful, rich wife from back then," looking utterly pleased with himself. "Oh my, how did you two end up together?" Ethan clapped my shoulder and said with a laugh, "Little bro, want your big brother to introduce you to some pretty girls? This one's too plain." Sophia Davis slapped his shoulder and said coquettishly, "What nonsense are you talking? What, do you actually know a lot of beauties?" Ethan quickly coaxed her, "Not at all, not at all. I just wanted to help my brother out." I smiled faintly, paying no mind. Actually, I had long since lost any feelings for Sophia. The experiences of my past life had completely disillusioned me. She had betrayed me, had a child with her lover, and hidden it from me, making me raise someone else's child for years. What was there to miss about such a disgusting woman? Victoria looked a bit insecure, wringing her hands nervously, and said in a low voice, "I'm just working part-time here." Ethan Sincere's current identity, as she knew him and I are just friends. Sophia Davis said, looked her up and down, but said nothing more. "All right, we have a date, so we won't bother you," Ethan said with a loud laugh, leading Sophia away. "When you two get paid, remember to treat your big brother to a big meal watching them leave," Victoria sighed. "Your brother and his girlfriend seem to have a great relationship." "Yeah, let's hope it lasts," I said casually, but inwardly I sneered. May the bitch and the scoundrel be together forever. I knew very well that Sophia and Ethan were together purely out of mutual convenience. Sophia liked Ethan's handsome face, which was currently Sincere's face, while Ethan coveted Sophia's family fortune. Their relationship was doomed from the start. However, none of this concerned me anymore. Soon the three of us reached university graduation. During these 4 years of university, I hadn't been idle. I started a business from scratch. Having worked for so many years in my past life, I naturally had an established network of contacts. Among them was my angel investor, James Harrison. Chapter 4. Since I planned to seek investment, I certainly wouldn't try to get something for nothing by bluffing. If you treat others like fools, you'll only be seen as a fool yourself. I created a comprehensive business plan and presentation, and spent 6 months conducting detailed market research. The trend of brand franchising was about to take off. Many celebrities and influencers would start endorsing popular restaurant chains. I planned to ride this wave early. This profit model wasn't actually reliant on the physical locations. The main income came from franchisees, with the brand owner earning franchise fees. By leveraging celebrities and influencers, we would attract potential investors. The brand owner would be responsible for selling processing equipment, management models, ingredient supplies, and so on, claiming a whole team would teach them how to open a store and make money, complete with success stories. They just needed to invest money. The restaurant itself would require little of their management. But in reality, for the franchisee, every investment was often a loss. Only the brand owner made a fortune. Of course, this method could only make quick money, and I only planned to use it to earn my first major capital. Now all I lacked was startup capital. I dialed the investor's number, a number I remembered from my past life. It was James Harrison. He was very surprised, wondering where I got his private number, but agreed to meet me, giving me only 5 minutes. I knew this was a common tactic of investors: 5 minutes. 1 minute, all designed to apply pressure and assess if the person was worth investing in. That day, after I presented my entire plan, Mr. Harrison tapped the table with his pen and said, "Actually, just before you came, someone else approached me for investment, though with a different business model." What was his name? Oh, right, Sincere Miller. You happen to be Ethan Miller. Are you two brothers? That's right, I nodded, admitting it frankly. Mr. Harrison smiled and spread his hands. Let me be frank, I'll only invest in one of you brothers. Now I have one question for you. Why should I invest in you? He tapped the business plan on the table. This plan of yours, I could easily get someone else to execute it. Why must I invest in you? That's what Mr. Harrison said, but I knew that in my past life, his cash flow had experienced some minor issues around this time, and he didn't have much speculative investment money available. I smiled and said, "Because you have few other equally promising options right now. No one else currently knows how to execute this model effectively. The first to try always bears the greatest risk. Of course, you can take this plan to others, but how they execute it is another matter entirely. This is an opportunity I've identified naturally. Only I know how to develop it properly without wasting its potential." "Are you so confident this business model will succeed?" he asked, quite curious. "I can sign a VAM agreement," I said with a smile. Good. Mr. Harrison immediately agreed, promising to test the waters by investing around $300,000, to be paid in installments. Then Mr. Harrison smiled and said, "When your brother, Sincere Miller, came, he brought expensive scotch and rare truffles, fine gifts. But when I asked for details, he was clueless. You're different. You came with a stack of plans and research reports. You're confident and capable. I knew who to invest in. When I left, I took the elevator downstairs and happened to run into Ethan and Sincere's body, now known as Sincere Miller, in the lobby. He and Sophia Davis were sitting on the sofa, playing a game together. "Hey, little bro, what are you doing here?" Ethan waved at me, a smirk on his face. Come, sit down. Where are you rushing off to?" I could only sit down resignedly. What a coincidence. "It is quite a coincidence. You haven't said what you're here for," Ethan asked impatiently. I could tell he was planning to brag about something, so I played along. Looking for investment, thinking of starting a student business. This was exactly what Ethan wanted to hear. He slapped his thigh and asked with a laugh, "Hard to get an appointment, right? Not just anyone can come here. Don't tell me you didn't even get to see anyone and got kicked out?" For a moment I didn't know how to respond. Seeing me hesitate, Ethan patted my shoulder as if for my own good and said comfortingly, "Don't be too discouraged. I got lucky thanks to Sophia. Her relative is a manager here, so I got to cut the line for an appointment." Without waiting for me to speak, Ethan started boasting, winking at me. "Your big brother here is about to start a big business. This overwhelming fortune, it's my turn now. When I get rich, I won't be ungrateful like a certain bastard." I knew what he meant by that. In the past life, what he envied most was my entrepreneurial success and considerable assets. He would always call me ungrateful and unfilial because I refused to let our parents place relatives in my company and didn't agree to lend him millions to squander. Because of these trivial matters, Mom and Dad had argued with me countless times before. Now I've already met that investor. Ethan flicked his Zippo lighter, lit a cigarette, and blew smoke in my face. He said he'd consider it. I reckon it's a sure thing. Chapter 5. "Congratulations, I said politely. Ethan said, "Hey, what's there to congratulate? It's all thanks to you, right?" "Ah ha 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 ha." Based on my past life's experience, I had successfully secured that investment and opened a popular restaurant. He must remember this, so he was certain he could get the investment too. But Sophia Davis didn't understand what he meant. She said, displeased, "How is it thanks to him? I've been running around helping you, and I haven't heard you praise me like that." "What do you mean?" "Baby, that's not what I meant." Ethan quickly tried to soothe her. "You two continue chatting, I won't stay long." I waved my hand and excused myself. Ethan still wanted to show off and brag, but I couldn't be bothered to play along and quickly walked away. His happy days were numbered. After returning, I immediately started building a flagship store. This is usually the benchmark establishment used to lure franchisees, so business had to be booming. Following my past life's experience, I opened a bubble tea shop on a busy street near the university with the highest foot traffic. I registered a company called Lucky Sip Tea, and the marketing slogan was "Drink Lucky Sip, good grades won't slip." After a month or two of hard work, the tea shop was on track, and business became increasingly prosperous. Seeing the time was right, I sought out minor influencers for promotion and endorsements, and spent heavily on franchise advertisements, attracting a large number of franchisees. I polished the image of the guidance team and drafted ingredient procurement contracts, claiming it was to ensure uniform quality, requiring all franchise shops to purchase raw materials from me. This was another long-term revenue stream. Soon, many investors joined, opening numerous Lucky Sip tea shops throughout the city. If they made money, I made money too. Besides franchise and guidance fees, there were also monthly raw material procurement fees, a steady stream of income. If they went bankrupt, I wouldn't lose out either, as franchise and guidance fees were non-refundable. Basically, it was a one-shot deal, quite damaging to one's reputation, a get-rich-quick and get-out business model. So, while my cash flow was abundant, I needed to continue expanding, gradually transitioning from tea shops to more substantial restaurants. The caliber of celebrities hired for endorsements also needed to be upgraded. I might even get celebrities to open franchise restaurants themselves. That's right, I was no longer just seeking initial investment, but securing larger financing. After all, hiring a list of celebrities for endorsements costs an astronomical sum. It's impossible without substantial capital. My angel investor, James Harrison, had received handsome dividends from the last venture, so he was the most enthusiastic this time, planning to make a large investment. So, I simply arranged a dinner, inviting several investors to eat and talk business. Mr. Harrison recommended, "I know a newly opened restaurant near your place. The food is so-so, but the ambience is great, very quiet, suitable for discussions." "All right, it's not like we're going for the food anyway," I agreed immediately. Soon, at the appointed time, I followed the location Mr. Harrison sent and walked into the restaurant. Several investors and executives had already booked a private room. I just needed to go in and discuss business. Unexpectedly, as soon as I entered, I saw Ethan in Sincere's body sitting at the counter playing on his phone. Looking around, there were hardly any customers in the restaurant. No wonder Mr. Harrison said it was quiet and good for talks. Well, you're well informed." Ethan put down his phone and looked at me with a smile. "Your brother just opened a restaurant and you're already here to freeload?" "No, I'm here to—" Before I could finish, Ethan waved his hand dismissively. "No problem. Eat as much as you want today. It's on me. I'm not stingy like you in my past life when I opened my restaurant. Ethan often brought his sketchy friends to eat and drink for free, ordering a huge table full of food and refusing to pay. After I scolded him a few times, he even had a falling out with me. On my way here, I noticed this restaurant was open next to one of my Lucky Sip tea shops. It seemed Ethan had followed my old path, found a similar location, and opened his first chain restaurant. Back then, because I had my initial capital, I started directly with a full-scale restaurant, focusing on a physical business, and didn't opt for the franchising model initially. Back then I wasn't ruthless enough, only thinking about making money honestly. Little did I know, how can you play the business game if you're not prepared to get your hands dirty? Every drop of capital's profit can have a dark side, but now Ethan didn't have an angel investor, yet he could still open a restaurant. I figured Ethan had once again relied on Sophia Davis's money power. Little did he know what was borrowed now would have to be repaid 100-fold later. I, at least, had built a successful company before. Now I didn't even know how Ethan would repay his debts in the future. "No, I have a reservation," I said. "My friends booked a private room long ago." Tisk, 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 how did you end up doing so poorly? Even I wasn't this pathetic back then. Scrounging off friends for meals. Ethan shook his head as he spoke. Indeed, everyone has their own destiny. You enjoyed your good fortune in the last life, it's my turn in this one. Chapter 6. Whatever makes you happy, I replied perfunctorily. But Ethan wouldn't let it go. He grabbed my arm and said, "Hey, which private room are you in? Tell your big brother, and I'll make sure you're well taken care of." Since the rebirth, Ethan had constantly been calling himself Big Brother, as if he really enjoyed the status this false identity gave him. "No need. Why be so polite with me? Come on, let's go together. Let me meet your good buddies too." He put his arm around my shoulder and followed me into the private room. I could only sigh helplessly. Ethan pushed open the door, saw the investors sitting inside, and first said disdainfully, "Where did you meet these sleazy old guys?" Wait, Mr. Harrison, what are you doing here?" He looked around carefully, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Mr. Harrison pushed up his glasses and asked, puzzled, "And you are—" "It's me, the one who gave you 2 bottles of expensive scotch last time." Before he could finish, Mr. Harrison interrupted, "Excuse me, I have an appointment now and I'm busy. Can we discuss this some other time?" Ethan froze again, stunned. I walked in and greeted them one by one. Everyone was beaming, looking at me as if I were a cash cow. But Ethan didn't understand what was happening. He thought there was some mistake, started shouting and causing a scene, pulling at me and demanding to know what was going on. Everyone looked at him as if he were a clown. "I'll explain later. If you keep this up, I'll have to find another restaurant," I said with a stern face. Ethan finally gave up resentfully. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Don't think dining with rich people means you've turned your life around. Don't forget, your wife, Sophia, is the real wealthy one. Without her, you're destined to be a loser for your whole life." His jealousy was flaring up again, making him green with envy. I glanced at him and said, "Are you talking about Sophia Davis? Well, I indeed can't handle her. If you like her so much, then she's all yours." "Bah, all yours? She's what I deserve. Don't make it sound like you're doing me a favor," Ethan said fiercely. "Oh? Then who was it that jumped off the rooftop holding me?" I took a step forward, rolled up my sleeves, and glared at him. "I haven't settled this score with you yet. Since rebirth, I've paid great attention to my physique and exercised regularly. Ethan was naturally no match for me. In this life, I wouldn't give him another chance to harm me." Ethan looked at my biceps, realized I wasn't someone to be trifled with, and finally left the room. Before leaving, he said contemptuously, "Just go hug your plain, dowdy Victoria Scott and be a loser for life if you're not destined for success. No amount of effort will ever help." I ignored Ethan. After closing the door to the private room, I began discussing financing with the investors, although there was a lot of negotiation and complex discussions about profit distribution during the process. I had the experience from my past life and skillfully finalized the relevant contracts. Everyone was very satisfied, and I now had a substantial amount of capital at my disposal. After they had eaten and drunk their fill, the investors left one by one. Mr. Harrison, however, stayed behind and said, "Young man, you don't seem like a young person at all. More like a seasoned veteran of the business world interested in working with me. 7-figure annual salary, benefits negotiable. How about it?" Clang, the sound of a plate shattering came from outside. Ethan, while pretending to carry plates, had been eavesdropping at the door and accidentally dropped one. When he saw me look his way, he quickly pretended nothing had happened. I smiled and said, "Mr. Harrison, are you interested in working with me? The annual salary is also 7 figures, and benefits are negotiable." "Ha ha, young and promising." He laughed and didn't mention recruiting me again. After leaving the restaurant, Ethan called me. I promptly blocked his number. In these 3 years, I hadn't been idle for a moment. I was busy with classes, building my business, and occasional gym visits, practically working non-stop. My relationship with Victoria Scott also developed rapidly. After we officially became a couple, I had her quit her convenience store job and provided her with a significant amount of startup capital to pursue what she loved. I never expected that this girl from a humble background, once considered plain, would become a sensational beauty blogger. With her exquisite makeup and distinctive looks, she went viral overnight, gaining millions of followers, and her popularity was still soaring. Perhaps her past insecurities made Victoria exceptionally diligent when practicing makeup, styling, and fashion. She also read many professional books on the subjects. Not only that, but she also did many free makeover sessions for ordinary people, helping many who were insecure and anxious about their appearance regain their confidence. As she often said, having been caught in the rain herself, she wanted to hold an umbrella for others. In front of the camera, she smiled brightly. Every flower has its own unique fragrance. You must always believe that life holds hope. After graduation, we continued with our respective careers. I also transitioned from franchising to owning physical businesses, accumulating considerable fixed assets, and becoming far more successful than in my previous life. 2 years later, Victoria and I held our wedding. All our family came, and Ethan also came with Sophia Davis. Since that incident at the restaurant, he and I hadn't had much contact. I didn't have the energy to pay attention to how he had been doing these past 2 years, and we barely spoke even during holidays. I only knew he had married Sophia last year and seemed to have a child this year. Now, reunited at my wedding banquet, he started pouring himself drinks again. Slinging his arm around my shoulder and emboldened by alcohol, he looked at Victoria and slurred, "How did this happen? How did she become so beautiful? Isn't she just supposed to be a worn-out hag?" Chapter 7. In the past life, Victoria had toiled daily, rarely wore makeup, and was never properly cared for, so she naturally aged quickly, her face becoming lined with wrinkles. But in this life, wearing a beautiful wedding dress, her skin was fair, her features picturesque like a movie star, stunningly beautiful and captivating. I looked at Ethan coldly, warning him to watch his words, but Ethan ignored me, seemingly determined to make a scene. He continued to grab me, saying, "And Mom and Dad, why are they so annoying?" Before he could finish, a relative nearby criticized, "Bah, you unfilial son, your parents have doted on you the most since you were little. How can you say such a thing?" Just then, Mom Susan Miller and Dad Robert Miller came over. As soon as she sat down, Mom pulled Ethan aside and said, "Hey son, how did your restaurant go bankrupt? I told you to listen to me and hire your uncle as the head chef, but you refused. Look what happened now." Dad nodded. "Exactly. And I asked you to arrange a job for your aunt. Why isn't it settled yet? Didn't we agree she'd be the general manager of your company?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. What does a popular chain restaurant need a head chef for? It's all about semi-finished product processing, focusing on fast serving, consistent taste, and not relying on individual chefs and a general manager with no experience. That was even more ridiculous, but my parents didn't understand any of this. Just like in the past life, they clung to Ethan, forcing him to satisfy the unreasonable demands of various relatives. If Ethan dared to refuse, he would be subjected to moral blackmail. My mom was an expert at throwing tantrums, and my dad excelled at scolding. It's not like they hadn't approached me with similar demands, but in this life, I was more decisive. I gave them money regularly, a fixed amount, nothing more, and refused to discuss other matters. After hitting a wall with me 2 or 3 times, they stopped pestering me. Sophia Davis was sitting nearby, winking at me, her hands also misbehaving, trying to discreetly touch my leg under the table, but I firmly pushed her hand away. At this moment, the huge stark contrast between his expectations and reality finally made Ethan break down. Why? Ethan screamed like a madman. I was prepared for this and had already signaled security, who quickly moved to restrain him, lest he completely ruin my wedding. He lay on the ground, staring at me with bloodshot eyes. I squatted down, looked at him, and said softly, "Isn't this the life you envied the most? How is it? Sophia cuckolded you, didn't she? The child isn't yours, right? You owe your father-in-law too much money to even dare to mention divorce, huh?" As I spoke, I poked his lower back and asked, "Oh, right, how's your liver doing? Can you even drink the wine at my wedding feast?" These words shattered Ethan's last psychological defense. He wailed uncontrollably like a child, grabbing my trouser leg, and sobbed, "I don't want it anymore. I don't want it, Sincere. I beg you, please, let's switch back." I looked at him coldly and said softly, "Too late." Suddenly, with a burst of unknown strength, he broke free from the security guards. He grabbed a dinner knife from the table, his eyes completely bloodshot, and snarled, "Let's die again if we die one more time. We can switch back if I can just live one more life. I'll definitely live better than you at that." Ethan lunged at me with the knife. The guests gasped in alarm. Sophia Davis stood there, stunned. Mom and Dad screamed, "Son, are you crazy? I guessed you'd try something like this." As I spoke, I delivered a sharp kick to his chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. Unlike Ethan, who had indulged in alcohol and debauchery, I hadn't slacked off on my physical training all these years. How could he possibly be my match? That single kick knocked the wind out of him, leaving him breathless and motionless on the floor. Security guards carried him out. The wedding continued as if it were just a minor, irrelevant interruption. The guests resumed their laughter and cheerful conversation. After the wedding, Victoria and I lived a happy and fulfilling life together. A few years later, I received news of Ethan's death from liver cancer. I heard that even in the terminal stages of his cancer, he was still drinking heavily, a chronic alcoholic, getting himself blind drunk every day, muttering incoherent nonsense like shouldn't have swapped. In the end, he left only one last sentence, and it was addressed to me. "Sincere, I still want my life. I just wanted to reply with a few words. In your dreams."